Hey guys, Paul here from FamilyWheels.ca. Thanks for tuning in to another car review for your growing family. And take a look at where we are this evening. We're on a camping trip. It's a beautiful spot, Crow's Nest Mountain behind me here. You can see Devin off in the distance making some dinner. Life is good. And right behind me here, even a little bit closer, is the Mercedes GLA, brand new for 2015. It shares the same chassis and base as the CLA sedan and the B Series hatchback. So all three of these vehicles are meant to be Mercedes' way of getting young couples, young families into Mercedes vehicles, kind of touching into that luxury brand for the first time at a reasonable price. The GLA, for example, starts at around $37,000, but climbs rather quickly up to around $65,000. That's the most that I figured I could spend on one of these using the configurator on the Mercedes website, and it's meant to compete with the likes of the BMW X1, the Audi Q3, the Acura RDX. So think kind of crossover vehicle, almost sort of a hatchback version of a crossover vehicle. A little bit more off-roady than the B Series, a little bit more aggressive styling. I think that it looks better than any of its competition, to be honest with you. But how is it going to fare for your growing family? That's what we're going to look at this week. And a camping trip, we've got all kinds of stuff brought along with us. So it'll really help give us a sense for if it can fit all of your stuff in your day-to-day life. Let's see how it does. So the first thing that stood out for me when I went to go pick up this GLA from Lone Star Mercedes here in Calgary is that they set me up with one of their delivery specialists. And this guy's full-time job is getting new owners oriented with their new car. And he gave me a real great broad sense of what the GLA can do. And the big standouts for me were the safety features on this car. Its competition does have fantastic safety features as well. Typically they're options, and they can make the price on these cars drive up rather quickly, whereas this has a raft of fantastic features right off the hop in the standard base model. Things like adaptive cruise control, a collision prevention system that will actually apply the brakes for you if it feels as though you're rolling up to a car in front of you and you're not acting quickly enough. It will take over for you. And it also has this incredible system that is looking at 70 different inputs from the driver at all times. It learns your driving style. And if it feels as though maybe you're falling asleep or getting a little bit groggy or haven't taken enough of a rest lately, it'll send up a little warning in front of you here on the display in front of the driver. So some pretty cool stuff there that's standard on the vehicle and does make this stand out compared to its competition. Okay, so let's talk about general driver comfort here, because there are a couple of other features that are standard on all models that I really like. First up is the all-wheel drive system. That's on all models. And I also really appreciate the fact that paddle shifters come standard. You don't have to get the sport mode, the AMG model, in order to get these paddle shifters. The shifter is right up here on the steering column, which means that I have room in the center console for more cup holders and general storage. But then if I want to shift over to manual mode, I can use these paddle shifters right here on the steering wheel. I like that for things like winter driving in the mountains, going around sharper corners, that sort of thing. And it means that you don't have to take your hands off the steering wheel nearly as much. Seat comfort on this car is also excellent. The base model comes with faux leather seats, and the model that I'm in today has the standard leather. It's not that super soft, buttery leather that you find in some cars, and you know what? For families, I think that's pretty ideal, because that soft stuff, while it's lovely, marks up and scratches and stains far more easily than what I'm in here today. This would stand up really well to family abuse. In terms of the infotainment system, it is fairly straightforward and easy to use. However, it's not controlled by a touchscreen. It's controlled by this dial that's down here by my thigh. And while I was able to eventually work it out and make sense of it, I just find that these days, given the fact that so many of us have tablets and iPhones and are using touchscreens all day long, that a touchscreen is just that much more intuitive. For the 2016 model year, this screen's going to get even larger, and the user interface is going to get even better. So something to look for 2016. I also wish that the infotainment system wasn't sort of just plonked onto the dashboard like this and it was actually integrated into the dash. Some people like the look, but to me it kind of just looks like a little bit of an afterthought, and I don't particularly like it, but that's just me. That's my thoughts. Now every time you start up this car, it's going to default to Eco mode. You have 3 options in this car: Eco mode, Sport mode, and Manual mode, using the shifters on the steering wheel like I talked about already. And Eco mode means that this car is going to try and conserve fuel as much as possible, and it means that its fuel economy numbers are really quite reasonable, from 7.4 liters per 100 kilometers on the highway to around 9.8 in the city. You know what, I actually am seeing those numbers myself, with a mix of highway, city, and even a little bit of gravel road driving. We're getting about 8.5 liters per 100 kilometers since I got this car from the dealership. Pretty good, especially when you consider the fact that this does have a turbo in it. It's a 2-liter turbo engine, but fairly sporty, although when it is in Eco mode, the 2-liter does tend to be a little bit sluggish. It changes how the transmission shifts as well. Pop it into sport mode and all of a sudden this car becomes a lot funner to drive. Which brings me to one of my beefs about this car. Recently I had a chance to drive a Lamborghini, which was one of the funnest things of the year for me for sure. And I loved the fact that on that car, right here on the steering wheel, you could move from Eco mode to sport mode, and it was right here and easy to do. Since this car does change character so much between Eco and Sport, I would love it if it was right here on the steering wheel so I could toggle it more easily instead of having to kind of search for it among this sea of buttons here on the center console area. Now if you really do like a sporty ride, you can up the ante with this car and get it in the AMG Sports Edition. It's going to change the character of this vehicle a lot though. It's not going to have as much ground clearance, it's going to change its fuel economy as well, and it kind of changes the point of the vehicle. I like the fact that this car is comfortable in the city, its fuel economy numbers are good, yet if you want to take it down a gravel road, it's going to do that for you quite capably. We took it down some gravel roads on our camping trip this weekend, and it was more than happy, especially when I put it into this off-road button here on the console. It really was a happy little camper driving through those back roads with us, and I liked that. But if you go with that AMG version, just know that you're not going to be getting the same car as this 250 version that I'm in here today. It's going to be quite different for you. Okay, so let's take a look at some of our standardized tests now, things that we do to all of our vehicles with Family Wheels to see how they stack up. First up is the rear trunk test. The same amount of gear in all of our trunk tests: 2 diaper bags, a couple of bags of groceries, a stroller, a backpack, and a ball. And for a small SUV, that sucks it up pretty nicely. And in fact, you might have seen a little earlier that our rather large dog also fit back there pretty well. The downside to that is that she pretty much maxed it out, and it meant that if you have extra gear, you'd have to start putting it in the back seat, and that's going to start to suck up your ability to add more passengers into the rear seat. Now, speaking of the back seat, how's that rear-facing child seat looking? Not too bad, actually. I was expecting it not to fit as well, but you can see those suck up a ton of space. And what's it going to do for legroom for the front passenger? Again, not bad at all. Looking at our measuring tape, we've got over 13 inches of legroom for that front passenger, which means for me, at 6'2", I'm still pretty comfortable up here. In fact, my shins aren't anywhere near the glove box, so not bad even for longer drives. I'm actually really pleasantly surprised. I wasn't expecting that. However, I'm a tall guy and I've set my seat up in the driver's seat just the way I like it, and it means that for the passenger in the next back seat over on this side is super limited. So if you're a tall driver and you expect to have anyone beyond the preteen to sit in the back, check it out. You're not going to have much room there for them at all. So something to consider there for sure. So how does this car stack up, particularly compared to its biggest competitor, which is the BMW X1? They're both the same price. They both are from German manufacturers. They both are kind of that entry-level luxury vehicle. to be honest with you, there are a lot of things that I prefer about the GLA. I think it looks a lot better. It's kind of got that sporty, sort of muscular look to it. Its cargo capacity is a bit more usable, and I just think that in terms of base value for this vehicle is better. You get a lot more for that base $37,000 price tag, especially in terms of those safety features that I was telling you about a bit earlier. If you're a bit of a tall driver like myself, I would caution that rear legroom's going to run out for your rear passengers pretty quickly. Maybe people beyond, let's say, 8, 9, 10 years old. That's something to consider. And another thing to look at is the fact that BMW is completely revamping its X1 for 2016. I didn't particularly love the old X1. I took it for a test drive a couple of months ago, and I just found that it still had quite a few things that it needed to work out. The new 2016 X1 is getting some positive reviews, and that could certainly be worth looking at as well. But for 2015, Mercedes has brought out a really excellent offering in the small kind of hatchback SUV market, and that's right here with the GLA.